Hello, welcome to today's lesson on naming compounds and writing formulas. You'll need a copy of your naming compounds and writing formulas guided notes for this lesson. Thank you. The objective for today's lesson is to recognize and describe binary ionic compounds, metals with multiple ions and polyatomic ions. Name and determine chemical formulas for ionic and molecular compounds. And for today's vocabulary, we have, wait for it, polyatomic ion. Describing ionic compounds. The name of an ionic compound must distinguish the compound from other ionic compounds containing the same elements. The formula of an ionic compound describes the ratio of the ions in the compound. Do you know the proper name for this insect? Proper naming is important for identification purposes. Medicine must be precise so that the correct drug is given to patients. Biological classification of species requires an acute naming for proper categorization. The insect shown here has been categorized by genus and species, so it is uniquely identified. In this picture shows an organism with genus and species name of Hymenopus coronatus, or common name, the orchid mantis. Compounds used in chemical reactions must be correctly identified in order for a reaction to occur. Binary ionic compounds are made of two compounds, a metal cation and a nonmetal anion. Naming binary ionic compounds is actually quite simple. The metal cation always goes first. The cation part of the compound is named by the metal itself. For example, Na is a sodium ion with a charge of a +1, so Na +1. The second part is nonmetal anion. The anion part of the compound is named by taking the element and dropping off the end and replacing it with IDE. For example, Cl would be the chloride ion, as it has a charge of -1. When they are together, they form a compound, NaCl, sodium chloride. Notice that the compound has a charge of 0. Concept check number 1. What does the formula of an ionic compound describe? Now would be a good time to pause the video, answer the question, and then resume play. Concept check number 1. What does the formula of an ionic compound describe? The formula of an ionic compound describes the ratio of ions in the compound. Some common anions. Here's a table that lists a couple of the common anions that there are. Now, if you notice, all of the suffixes have been dropped off. Like fluorine was changed into fluoride. You add IED to an anion. So fluoride, chloride, bromide, iodide, oxide, so on and so forth. Metals with multiple ions. Alkali metals, alkaline earth metals, and aluminum form ions with positive charges equal to the group number. For example, the symbol for potassium is K+, 1. And the symbol for calcium is Ca, 2+. And the symbol for aluminum is Al, 3+. Many transition metals form more than one type of ion. Notice the two copper ions listed in this table. A copper 1 ion with a 1+ charge and a copper 2 ion with a 2+ charge. When the metal forms more than one ion, the name of the ion contains a Roman numeral to indicate the charge on the ion. The ion names can distinguish red copper 1 oxide from black copper 2 oxide. The formula for copper 1 oxide is Cu2O. because it takes two copper 1 plus charge ions to balance out the charge on an oxygen 2 minus ion. The formula for copper 2 oxide is CuO because it takes only one copper 2 plus charge ion to balance out the minus 2 charge of an oxygen ion. The electron dot diagram shown describes a group of atoms that includes 1 nitrogen and 4 hydrogen atoms that are covalently bonded and is called an ammonium ion. Why does this group have a positive charge? The nitrogen atom has 7 protons, and each hydrogen atom has 1 proton, 11 in total. But the group only has 10 electrons to balance. The charge on the protons, 8 valence electrons, and nitrogen's 2 inner electrons. A polyatomic covalently bonded group of atoms that has a positive or negative charge and is a unit. The table here shows names of the formulas to some of the polyatomic ions. The formula for iron 3 hydroxide is FeOH3. The subscript 3 indicates that there are 3 hydroxide ions for each iron 3 ion. Writing formulas and compounds. Place the symbol of the cation first, followed by the symbol of the anion. Use subscripts to show the ratio of ions in the compound. The charge of the compound will be neutral, so the total charges on the cations and anions must be 0. And remember that with anions, to replace the ending with ide, IDE. Oxygen 2 minus is oxide, Cl minus 1 is chloride, etc. I'm sure you get the picture there. Concept check number 2. Question 1. What is a polyatomic ion? Question 2. Why are Roman numerals used in the names of compounds that contain transition metals? Question 3. What suffix is used to indicate an anion? This would be a good time to pause the video, answer the question, and then resume play. Concept check number 2. What is a polyatomic ion? It is a covalently bonded group of atoms that has a positive or negative charge and acts as a unit. Question 2. Why are Roman numerals used in the names of compounds that contain transition metals? The Roman numerals help distinguish the multiple ion transition metals. Question 3. What suffix is used to indicate an anion? Ide, IDE. Simple. Like ionic compounds, molecular compounds have names that identify specific compounds and formulas that match those names. With molecular compounds, the focus is on the composition of the molecules. The name and formula of a molecule compound describes the type and number of atoms in a molecule of the compound. Rules of naming molecular compounds. General rule is that most metallic elements appear first in the name. What does most metallic mean? Elements are farthest to the left of the periodic table. Also, if both elements in the same group, then the element that is closest to the bottom of the group is the one that is more metallic. To name the second element, change the ending to ide, IDE, as in hydrogen peroxide. Two compounds that contain nitrogen and oxygen have the formulas N2O4 and NO2. The names of these two compounds reflect the actual number of atoms of nitrogen and oxygen in the molecule of each compound. This picture represents Greek prefixes used to describe the number of nitrogen and oxygen atoms in each molecule. In N2O4 molecule, there are 2 nitrogen atoms and 4 oxygen atoms. The Greek prefixes for 2 and 4 are di and tetra. The name for the compound with the formula N2O4 is dinitrogen tetraoxide. An NO2 molecule, there are 1 nitrogen atom and 2 oxygen atoms. The Greek prefix for 1 and 2 are mono and di. A name for the compound with the formula NO2 is mononitrogen dioxide. However, the prefix mono is often not used for the first element in the name. A more common name for the compound with the formula of NO2 would be nitrous oxide, or nitrogen dioxide, Writing molecular formulas. To write the formula of a binary molecular compound, first use the prefixes in the name to tell you the subscript of each element in the formula. Then, write the correct symbols for the 2 elements with the appropriate subscripts. What is the formula for diphosphorus tetrafluoride? Di means 2, so there are 2 phosphorus atoms, and tetra means 4, so there are 4 fluoride atoms. The formula for the compound is P2F4. Concept check number 3. Question 1. How many potassium ions are needed to bond with phosphate ion? Question 2. What are the names of these ionic compounds? NaCl, LiCl, and CaCl2. Question 3. What do the name and formula of a molecular compound describe? This would be a good time to pause the video, answer the questions, and then resume play. Question 1. How many potassium ions are needed to bond with phosphate ion? 3. What are the names of these ionic compounds? NaCl, LiCl, and CaCl2. We have sodium chloride, lithium chloride, and calcium chloride. What do the name and formula of a molecular compound describe? The name and formula of a molecular compound describe the type and number of atoms in a molecule of the compound.